Welcome to the AJ Sports Podcast. This is episode one. What we do is we're going to simply cover what's around the sports world. So today I'm covering college football week one, and tomorrow I will make my NFL season predictions and react to the Georgia Clemson game or Georgia Tech Clemson game. So week one, I will cover 1 week zero game because I think it's important how the implications will go to the season, which is Northwestern Nebraska. And the only comment that I will say about that is that game had officially cost Scott Frost his job. Nebraska is not going to make a bowl game this year. I'm sorry. If you cannot beat Northwestern, there's too much competition in the Big Ten, and Nebraska just ain't. They're not winning. The fact that you can call an onside kick when you're up by 11 points, 11 points, is a disastrous coaching decision that basically cost Nebraska the game. Basically cost them the game. You can you cannot go week one knowing that if you fail again, your ass is grass. You just cannot go to week one and lose to Northwestern. That couldn't happen. Guess what? It happened. So Nebraska, unfortunately, you're gonna disappoint again, and Scott Frost will be fired. So week one really started on Thursday. Two games that they're pretty much worth highlighting. Purdue and Penn State. I'm an Oklahoma fan. I'm a Purdue sympathizer. That's just how it goes. This game, I had no surprise how the game went. Purdue's passing attack had no problem. Aiden O'Connell was slinging the ball. Charlie Jones was playing really well, wide receiver. The problem is that Purdue just cannot run the football when they need to. And when you're up against teams like Penn State, who has New York Six Bowl ambitions, to beat these guys, you got to be able to run the football and chew that clock out, and they couldn't. And not only they failed to chew down the clock, they decided to test Penn State's potential first round draft pick at corner multiple times. That's just not a recipe to win the game. And Sean Clifford went on that his last scoring drive. He was just scorching like completion, 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 completion. Just easy. It was just easy for them. So Penn State wins 35-31. Yeah, only a 4-point win, but once again, Purdue's a solid team. And it's week one. It's on the road. So Penn State, great start to the season. Let's see if they can really get going, because last year was kind of wasn't they were a good team, but they weren't really that great. Before we talk about the renewed backyard brawl, Oklahoma State's defense looks suspect, but Scott Sanders threw all over the place. Wake Forest did what they had to do. Tennessee did what they had to do. Now let's talk about the backyard brawl, which is Pitt and West Virginia. Very, very good game that ended up happening there. It was a great game. Two quarterbacks that came there for transfers. JT Daniels from Georgia, Gunnar Slovis from USC. It was back and forth the entire game. The two things that really needs to be highlighted is West Virginia's pass rush sacked Slovis 5 times. 5 times. So Pitt's offensive line looks a little bit suspect as of right now. And JT Daniels, he looked solid. When you watch the game, several wide receivers from both teams committed some brutal drops. And then the most brutal one brought to you by Bryce Ford Wheaton, who did score 2 touchdowns in this game. Unfortunately, he dropped the pass, which the corner just happened to get the ball and get it for a pick six. And then West Virginia almost tied it on that fourth down completion, but it just, yeah, that call, it was the right call. That ball just hit the ground right before he caught it. So Pitt ends up winning 38-31. I don't know what to think of West Virginia, to be honest. They show promise. I thought Pitt was going to win comfortably, so maybe this is a good sign for West Virginia. You got to get the drops cleaned up from both teams. Pitt, a little bit of a scare. I understand it's the backyard brawl, so you're playing based on emotions much of the day. That was a little suspect too from Pitt. Only win by 7 points against the West Virginia team that's mediocre at best. So I don't know. That's other games. The Friday games, Michigan State did what they had to do. They beat Western Michigan. Virginia Tech losing to Old Dominion. Jeez, Virginia Tech, their standards have fallen, hadn't they? IU beat Illinois on a pretty tight contested game, 23-20. TCU blew out Colorado 38-13. Now the good old classic Saturday games. Where do we start? Well, let's get the blowouts out first. Alabama did what they had to do. They crushed Utah State 55-0. Michigan State, who's having a quarterback battle, beat Colorado State 51-7. As a Sooner fan, they did what they had to do. They beat UTEP 45-13. I guess it's UTEP, but last year we were letting teams hang around like it's nothing. So Brett Venables' debut was great. Lincoln Riley's debut at USC went as perfect as possible. They crushed Rice 66-14. Yes, it's Rice, but still, USC was not blowing these teams out of the goddamn water every day. So there's a lot of promise at USC. Miami scored 70 points. Damn. Arkansas and Cincinnati, a very good game. Arkansas, I expected Cincinnati to have a slight fall off. Some of their best players are gone, so they could still win the American Conference, but it's hard to beat a great team like Arkansas with KJ Jefferson at quarterback. Just a ground and pound level of team that Arkansas has. It's tough to beat that. Let's get some other primetime games. We had two big primetime games. Georgia blew the fuck out of Oregon. Like, Oregon got, nuked. It was that bad. Stetson Bennett played probably the best game he's ever played. We'll see if that has implications that he's actually going to take his play to the next level. The Georgia's defense is what Georgia defense does. Even though Oregon did slightly move the ball a little bit, but they never went far. They only scored 3 points. So Georgia looks like they have full intentions of running it back to back, blowing out Oregon 49-3. Jesus. The other one is Notre Dame and Ohio State. Notre Dame competed very well. I thought it was going to be a blowout, in my opinion. So Notre Dame did a good job of keeping that Ohio State's offense in check as much as possible. The problem is, when you only score 10 points against Ohio State, that ain't cutting it, period. CJ Stroud, he did what he had to. It wasn't the best game by him, but he did what he had to do. He completed 24 out of 34 passes, 223 yards, 2 touchdowns. The running game for Ohio State actually was pretty well. Travion Henderson, look, sometimes we get carried away with expectations and not realizing, 15 rushes and 91 yards is a pretty good game. It's just that we are holding this guy to a high, ridiculous standard just because he was insanely good last year. Maya Williams seems to be running a legit running back number 2 in Ohio State. He was trucking all over the Irish defense. So looks like Ohio State has a legit 2 running back tandem that can cause some problems. Now, Ohio State's passing game was kind of sabotaged. Jackson Smith-Njigba, who is projected to be the best receiver in this season, kind of had an injury, so they couldn't really run their full offense much. And I mean, Marvin Harrison Jr. and Emeka Egbuka, Egbuka's a young guy, so it'll take a bit, but Look, I don't care you only scored 21 points. A top 5 win against a top 5 team is a top 5 team win. So, I hope Ohio State fans don't go way too crazy about only beating Notre Dame 21-10. It's week 1. They can score bazillion points against other teams. A&M's offense looked meh against Sam Houston. Texas A&M's defense is supposed to be really good, and they showed it. Shut against Sam Houston, but come on, it's hard to shut anybody out in football. Pac-12, you got some problems. Utah lost to Florida 29-26. Great win by Florida. Terrible loss by Utah. This pretty much wipes them out of the playoffs, in my opinion. They're done. They're done. They're gonna get one more loss. I can guarantee it. Wisconsin did what they had to do. Brandon Allen, he seems to be possibly he's gonna challenge Travion Henderson as the best running back, not only in the Big Ten but in the country. Kentucky did okay. They did what they had to do. Ole Miss only scored 28 points against Troy. It's week 1. Little bit of worrisome if you're an Ole Miss fan. Houston barely beats University of Texas San Antonio. Come on, Houston. BYU did what they had to do. They beat South Florida. Iowa, this is a fun one. Spencer Petras needs to get benched. Last year, the offense, the minute they were ranked number 2, that offense was atrocious. And they were atrocious again. How in the hell do you only score 7 points? And they didn't score a single touchdown, field goal, and 2 safeties. Yeah, that's how they got their 7 points. Iowa, get your offense together because that was a total utter embarrassment committed by your offense. Trash. Speaking of trash, North Carolina's defense is trash. Chase Bryce. You probably know him as a former Clemson backup. He only threw one incompletion. One incompletion. App State scored 40 fucking points in the fourth quarter. Now, North Carolina's defense already had trouble week 0. And that defense looked just straight up a landfill. Now, yes, North Carolina's quarterback Drake May. He looks very good. But as an Oklahoma fan, as someone who knows, if that defense is so bad, it's not like your Oklahoma's offense like 2018, 2019 either. Good luck, North Carolina. It's going to be a frustrating season. UCLA, they're showing their potential. They crushed Bowling Green. San Diego State lost to Arizona. That's a little odd. Arizona only won 1 game last year, so that was odd. Vanderbilt, it's Vandy. Okay, they beat Elon 42-31. Vanderbilt does look a little bit better, but you're still not making a bowl game. I'm sorry. Auburn beats Mercer 42-16. Auburn has a lot of mess going on right there, like institution-wise, in their athletics program. Good Lord. Yeah, they probably won't get far. South Carolina. Spencer Rattler's first game at South Carolina. It's a win over Georgia State. But Spencer Rattler looked sluggish again. Only 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions. Jesus. Spencer, thank God we got Oklahoma got rid of his ass. Texas Tech blew out Murray State. Texas is probably gonna have a frustrating year because they were injured. They got injured to hell. They did beat Louisiana Monroe 52-10. Quinn Ewers' first start, very successful. Syracuse blows out Louisville 31-7. Good Lord. Washington State, they're gonna have problems. They barely beat Idaho 24-17. Oregon State, looks like Oregon State may be just a solid team. Washington beats Kent State, but who knows how good Washington is. And then the Florida State and LSU. Oh, God, this was a fun one. This was a fun one. Just like the Green Bay Packers last year, LSU's special teams cost them the game. 2 muffed punts, a blocked field goal. George Travis played a pretty good game, actually, for Florida State. Now, I mean, Ontario Wilson made a couple spectacular catches out there at Florida State. So Florida State looks pretty good this year. We'll see how much they can keep going. But very promising start for Florida State. I know it's LSU. LSU's a wild card this year. You don't know what you're gonna get. Jay Daniels played solid, especially we'll talk about that last drive. Jay Daniels had a pretty good debut. It wasn't the greatest, but it was a good debut. And look, I don't care how good you are. If you can lead a 99-yard drive with just a little over a minute and a half, like under a minute and a half to go, you're a competent starter. Jay Daniels was hurting Florida State with his legs all game long. And then the craziness after that, the game was literally decided on the final play with 1 second left. LSU scores a touchdown. And so it's 24-23. Got to kick the extra point. Guess what happens? Florida State blocked the extra point. Florida State blocked the extra point, and LSU loses 24-23. So a lot of things that need to be cleaned up in Baton Rouge. LSU, once again, you don't know what you're going to really get this year. This is Brian Kelly's first season. So you gotta give him time, but when you're a Brian Kelly caliber coach, teams do expect results almost immediately. So tomorrow, I will upload my NFL predictions. I officially got those. I predicted every game who's the winner. So that'll drop tomorrow, and I'll comment on the Clemson and Georgia Tech game they play tonight. We'll see how they go. So this is episode 1. Thank you guys for watching.